And for the third time this week, we are set for current and relevant business conversations here on Business Morning, which is live on Channels Television. Good morning and welcome. I'm Ini John Mekwa. So let's get into the business for today, starting with happenings in the grains market. Chicago corn edged higher today after dropping earlier in the session to its lowest in a week on pressure from crop-friendly U.S. weather and easing Black Sea supply concerns. Wheat and soybeans rose 0.8%. U.S. weather has added a bit of pressure on prices, even as Ukrainian ships continue to move out with supplies. Well, the most active corn contract on the Chicago Board of Trade added 0.3% at $6.12 a bushel as of early this morning, after hitting its lowest since the 8th of August, which was at $6.06 a bushel. Wheat gained 0.8% at $8.09 for half a bushel, and soybeans climbed 0.8% to $13.92 a bushel. Well, forecast for rain this week in dry western parts of the U.S. corn and soybean belt, a pressured market despite declining crop conditions last week, as reported by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Supply fears related to Russia's invasion of Ukraine have eased by initial grain shipments under a safe passage agreement, which you have been experiencing for a couple of weeks now. From the grains market to the oils market, where prices rose over $1 today, rebounding from 6-month lows that it hit in the previous day, as unexpected large drop in U.S. oil and gasoline stocks reminded investors that demand remains firm, if overshadowed by the prospect of a global recession. Brent crude futures were last up 82 cents to $93.16 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures also rose 85 cents to $87.38. The contract slumped about 3% on Tuesday as weak U.S. housing starts data spurred concerns about a potential global recession. Well, from there to go to where the United Kingdom is using its post-Brexit powers to launch one of the world's most generous trading schemes with developing countries. The International Trade Secretary, Anne-Marie, who launched the new developing countries trading scheme, says that it will extend tariff cuts to hundreds of more products exported from developing countries, going further than the EU's generalized scheme of preferences. This is on the top of thousands of products which developing countries can already export to the UK duty-free, and will mean 99% of goods imported from Africa under the scheme will enter the UK duty-free. Nigeria stands to benefit from this scheme, which covers a wide variety of products, from clothes and shoes to foods that aren't widely produced in the UK, including olive oil and tomatoes, and they will benefit from this lower or zero tariffs. And talking about Nigeria now, the Minister for Mines and Steel Development, Mr. Olamilekan Adegbite, is seeking collaboration with mining investors to transform the country in processing its raw materials to finished products for export. Addressing journalists ahead of the 2022 Mining Week, the minister says that the event will help in reconnecting Nigeria to new opportunities in the industry, unlocking the country's mining potentials, as well as promoting it as the best investment destination hub for mining development.
To attend and participate.
This event traditionally is organized by Ebuka Group and PwC in Nigeria in collaboration with the Miners Association of Nigeria. It is designed to promote Nigeria as the next best investment destination for mining, especially Nigeria being very fresh in mining. Most of our minerals are still very close to the surface, and of course this makes it easier and cheaper to mine, and of course brings more profit for the miners. This event forms part of our strides in beating the country's drum loudly that, yeah, Nigeria is a mining destination. Yes, Nigeria is at that vantage position to provide these minerals to the world. We want Nigeria to become an industrial hub where finished products will be exported to different parts of the world. Despite the negative news out there. Nigeria is indeed safe and ready for business. There are country risks, but they are quite manageable.
Well, that was the minister there. And moving away from that, I think one of the hottest story in Nigeria now is the threat of blackouts. Now, electricity supply conversation is not new in Nigeria, but when we hear that the federal government's intervention fund to the electricity distribution companies has risen to 2.9 trillion naira from 2 trillion naira recorded as of May this year, and yet we have the workers. I think if you did watch the news at 10 yesterday, you would see where the workers are protesting, the unions are protesting and threatening to cut supply from the supply to Nigerians from today. But by estimation, the 2.9 trillion naira is the total funding extended to the sector since privatization in 2013. And some people will ask, so what was the essence of that privatization? In November 2013, the federal government unbundled the power holding company of Nigeria, that's the PHCN, and sold 18 utility firms to private investors. But we know that recently some of those investors, some of those discos have had to be rescued by banks and even the government. So discussing the way forward now, that's what we want to do this morning with Femi Adeyemo. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Energy, Oil and Gas, and he deals mostly with alternative energy. So I guess if we cannot get enough supply from the national grid, why don't we look elsewhere? That's actually our focus this morning. So good morning, Femi. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Yeah. So I don't know if you've heard that Nigerians may not get supply from tonight if the Electricity Workers Union go ahead with their threats. I don't know, what's your reaction to that to start with?
I think for Nigerians that are able to get alternative supply sources, they will have electricity. And I continue to say the same thing. We cannot continue to do the same thing as a country and expect different results. So the government needs to just be willing for once and resolve the hydra-headed crisis that we have in our electricity distribution sector. That's the distribution, the generation, the entire value chain. We need a different approach. So I'm not surprised when I saw the news that the electricity workers want to embark on a strike. It's a sector that need some sort of disruption. Government is still holding 40% of the distribution companies, and I think that's where the bottleneck is. Government should let go of the 40% they still owed or own on the distribution companies and let market forces more or less take over. Nigerians are already paying more for electricity anyway. Diesel generators every nook and crannies of the country. So government should just let go. If private sectors operate, they see what we have in the telecom sector. Initially, it was more expensive, but now, I mean, everyone is fine. And we have human capacity that we've also been able to develop in that sector of the economy. So indeed, electricity is not rocket science, as one of the previous ministers had said, but it appears that it continues to be rocket science in our country.
I mean, you say government should let go, but even the distribution arm that the government let go of, I know you heard recently how, the banks and they had to come through again, so even the part that the government has let go of is not running smoothly.
I disagree with that, Ini. Even though, we have 60% ownership by the private sector. Government is government still owns 40% of the distribution companies. And that's why investors that have the wherewithal, the technical competence, the capital that are excited to get into the market are not jumping in, because governments still have more or less undue influence on the distribution companies. As a matter of fact, where I sit, I have had investors inbound requests calling our organization, speaking to me in foreign conferences about the sector and the likelihood of governments more or less giving up the remaining 40%. So where we sit and in the sector, in the investment or investors ecosystem, it is not still 100% privatized. It's 60% privatized, and the 40% that the government owns, the undue influence is not allowing market forces to play, even in the distribution part of the value chain. And that's what is leading to the problem that we have today. And if we continue to do that, if we like, we should pray till tomorrow. We're still going to continue to get the same results.
So what do you say about expectation from the new Senate bill, you know, from the Constitution Amendment that could allow states and even private corporations to produce and distribute and not necessarily go through the national grid?
That's a step in the right direction. And I can't wait to see that executed. Because again, we are a country that our problem has always been on the implementation and the execution. It's not lack of policy. So this is a step in the right direction. I hope that we will be able to implement it. Where, as stated, each state can generate their own power. They can also distribute the power within their states. There are several opportunities globally. There are several investments that are, and investors that are looking into coming to Nigeria. And this is one of such initiatives that can bring that to the fore. So I hope that indeed we will move beyond it being an act to really executing it, for the benefit of the entire nation.
Yeah, so I guess when we talk about that, then one is not restricted to the hydro to produce energy. So you have solar, you have wind, and we have abundance of all of this. But I guess even at this stage, if you go to a lot of homes have embraced some of this, but the overhead cost is really high, and that becomes discouraging. And then you see people go back to generator, and that, of course, with what it does to the environment, the noise, and even the cost of petrol and diesel at this time also comes into play. But I guess the overhead cost of embracing alternative sources of energy is also of a major concern in Nigeria.
Yeah, that's partially correct, especially for businesses or homes that want to acquire systems outright. And I think one of what we've also seen as a player, as an active player in that sector, is because of our culture of wanting to own things. You know, in other economies, for instance, if you look at Australia, if you look at even a lot of states in the US, California, for instance, you have, several millions of solar deployments. But in most of these countries, people don't bother to buy the system outright. They opt in for leasing plan, or maybe even energy as a service plan. But I can tell you, we have companies like ours and a few others that have been able to raise capital to tell Nigerians that, you know what, you don't have to pay for that systems outright. You can either pay on a monthly basis, maybe over 5 years to own the system if you must own, or just even pay for the energy you use on a monthly basis. But what we've seen is there are still a good percentage of Nigerians that would prefer to own, even though the money is not in the bank to own. You know, so my recommendation will be that Nigerians should look at leasing plans. Look for companies that can provide you long-term, mid to long-term, 3 to 5 years leasing plan to get your reliable solar solutions. It should not be anything less than with lithium batteries. If any company is offering you anything less than 5 years warranty, or maybe even more than 10 years on the solar panel, run, because it might then be a case of in a few years, just like you said, running back to diesel generators. So that would be my advice. Nigerians should look for companies that are able to offer them solar solutions on a leasing plan, because with that, it takes away the myth of maybe it might even break, or, as you said, the risk or the concerns or the blockers of the upfront cost, which of course we know that a lot of Nigerians might not be able to afford for a reliable system.
Yeah, well, talking about affordability, even the plans you talk about, the takeoff plan is normally high. It's mostly in millions.
No, I disagree in it. So it depends. It depends on, there are different systems for different cadre or category. So for instance, I give an instance, and I hope that I am permitted to mention company names. So for the Nigerians that are using the Pass My Neighbor generators, right? So there is the MTN Lumos there. That is the replacement to I Pass My Neighbor generators. What's the monthly fee? Maybe 8,000 naira or less, right? And upfront cost for, the sign-up fee for that is not up to 100,000 naira. So it's as there are systems, there are companies for every category of whatever diesel or petrol generators that Nigerians are using today. Of course, for Nigerians that are using diesel generators that must run their ACs and all of that, of course, there is company like Ours Energy that can do a direct replacement of a 30 kVA generator and say, you know what, diesel prices now, it's a no-go area. But if you're already spending that money, instead of you spending 100,000, 200,000 monthly on diesel, let that money go into a leasing repayment for a solar solution that you would then own, maybe over 3 years, and then in the next 7 years after ownership, you don't have to pay anyone for diesel or buying diesel generator again. So again, I reiterate that there is a package or a solution for every Nigerian today. For Nigerians that want just lighting, there is Green Light Planners, there is Daylight. So there is a solution across the value chain. And I just wonder when I still see Nigerians lamenting, because indeed, until the government is ready to really, and I'm an advocate of a good energy mix. I don't think the whole country should be on renewables, no. But with where we are in the country today, more or less, it's like a racket. And I don't apologize for saying that, because we just continue to run in circles, and if we don't do anything different, we'll come back here in 10 years, in 2032, and we'll still be saying the same thing. God forbid. But.
So you're saying that even these threats from the electricity union, well, shouldn't move anybody if at least majority of Nigerians had embraced this alternative. But I guess, as you said, we cannot put everybody in the basket at the same time. But we do have the rural electrification, from the federal government, which is also working on spreading this alternative renewable energy, especially to the rural areas. And I hear they're doing some work in those areas.
Yes, Rural Electrification Agency they've done some fantastic work. But as you said, more is being done in the rural areas. And I have not been silent about this. We can spend hundreds of millions of dollars in the rural areas. We hope that rural urban migration will reduce. But unfortunately, it's not really having that much impact that we want in the city, where we have the teeming youths that needs to be gainfully employed, that needs to stay back at home, and then energize our economy and get the economy to work. A few weeks ago, the bankers committee were more or less lamenting because of all of their youths, their smart software developers that are leaving Nigeria in droves. Because a lot of these guys, they're at home, they need to be able to work, they do not have power. So if Rural Electrification Agency is spending most of the millions of dollars loaned from the World Bank in rural communities, I hope that we will have significant impact or ripple effects of that on the economy. So my advice, as much as I said, well done to Rural Electrification Agency, I have always said that they need to look more in the urban. And conversations around maybe, oh, it is disco franchise area or not, it is still a function of the will as a country. We need to have that will to make things work. Otherwise, again, we're just going to be saying the same thing over and over, year after year.
Well, I guess the Rural Electrification Agency is looking at the rural because they believe that those in the urban can actually purchase, at least have the power, you know, to purchase some of those alternatives that are available to them, unlike those in the rural areas who hardly have that purchasing power to acquire.
But the youths, I mean, the youths need the power to be able to help to generate more revenue for the country, because these are the guys that will pay taxes. So I am not saying don't do anything in the rural, but the way it is now, you see about 80% or more of the allocation and the focus on the rural. And I mean, by next year, I'll be 10 years in this sector. We've not seen the kind of impacts and catalyzation that had happened in a few other countries. For instance, in Nigeria, who used to work with Schneider Electric, that we started this together, he has moved to Southeast Asia. And we're having a conversation, and he was amazed with the amount of impact and the developments that Vietnam, for instance, had seen. And they started these movements to renewables far after we started in Nigeria. But they had the will as a country, you know. So again, rural, not saying we shouldn't do rural, but it shouldn't be a case of 80% when you are in a country where the grid collapses almost once a year, and we're still in this comatose of having to bail out these schools every now and then. That policy is flawed, and we need to go back to the drawing board and deal with it. If we continue to just window dress it, the workers will strike today, and then there will be a meeting at the round table. They might come back in a few weeks, but it will still happen again.
Yeah,
because, we don't deal with it from the roots.
At least, I mean, from here now, we can expect maybe this new bill to bring a sort of a change, attract more investors, and see more funds go to the renewables and attract even more consumption in that area. And that would be good for our climate also. We're talking about environment and climate change and all of that. So eventually it's a win-win.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I am very, very hopeful that the acts that would allow the state to generate and consume their own power will again be implemented. That will be a positive one. And I continue to say that when it comes to power, government should, as much as possible, allow the private sector. If we did not allow private sector to play in telecoms, we would have still been where we were, maybe with just minor changes to the 400,000 lines we had in year 2000 or 1999. But we'll see where we are today. In emerging markets in Africa, government should let private sector do business and just be there providing enabling environment.
All right, Femi Adeyemo, Chief Executive Officer of Energy, Oil and Gas. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Ini. Thanks for having me.
So that's it, from energy to AFEX. That's what we'll do after the break. This is Business Morning on Channels Television. we have Omotola Akongbe joining us from our Abuja studio. She's a market data and research analyst at AFEX, joining us now to give us the details. Hi, Omotola. Good morning. So what's the details for the week ended the 15th of August?
Hi, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here again today. So during the trading week, we saw a decline of 39.29% in our total turnover from 1.3 billion to 0.79 billion. We also saw a decline of 12.91% decline. We also saw a decline of 12.91% in our total volume traded. Our total volume traded on the exchange declined from 3 million contracts to 2.8 million contracts. However, our number of deals increased by 2.24%, moving from 268 deals to 274 deals. The AFEX commodity index, the ACI, declined by 1.55%, moving from 451.21 points to 444.22 points. Our AFEX export index, the AEI, increased by 2.44%, moving from 190.65 points to 195.29 points. Across our volumes traded, we saw an increase in the volume of paddy rice, soybean, cashew, and sesame traded. But paddy rice made up the largest volume traded on the exchange, constituting 58% of the total volume traded. Our price, we saw an increase in the price of sesame by 5.26% to close the trading week at 800 naira per kilogram. We saw a decline, however, a second consecutive decline in the price of maize by 4.12% to close the trading week at 200.57 naira per kilogram. We also saw a second week consecutive decline in the price of soybean, declining by 1.23% to close the trading week as 400.31 naira. For more information about our commodities, kindly visit at africanexchange.com, and to join our trading platform, kindly download our app on the Play Store or iOS Store, ComX. Thank you.
All right, Omotola, thank you so much for that detail. Still staying with AFEX now. Yeah. Well, still staying with AFEX now, we're talking climate change, and we know that that's a hot topic around the world. It's been on for a very long time, and now we want to see how it's negatively impacting food security in Nigeria. Some people think that Nigeria is immune to climate change, but not so. So flooding in particular regions threatened crop yields in recent years and has widened the demand-supply gap in key commodities. AFEX is concerned about this, but let's see what they're saying about some viable interventions that could safeguard food security in the face of the threat of climate change. We have to discuss that. Joining us virtually, Nathaniel Itim. He's the fund manager, Food Security Fund with AFEX. Good morning, Nathaniel. Good to have you on the show.
Good morning, Nini. Good to be here. Good morning, Nigeria.
Good morning. So what's currently going on when we talk about climate changes, both locally and internationally, especially as it affects food security?
Thanks, Nini. As you rightly mentioned, climate change has been a burning issue, at least for the past 4 to 5 years, especially in the lingo of some Nigerians. In fact, I vividly recall being a student in university and having a lecturer try to convince us as electrical and electronics engineering students to be at the forefront of helping to provide greener energy solutions. And at the time, I recall that I was sort of on the fence in terms of the climate change effect in Nigeria, because at the time, what we would hear was just flooding in some location, but not really widespread, at least not in the way we have seen in the past 3 to 4 years. But a decade from this conversation that I had in university to now, the effect is even more widespread. I'll use an example of some projects that we financed this year. So finance a project in Jigawa for rice production during dry season, just to begin to help commercial production both in dry season and wet season. And what had happened is that towards the ending of the harvest, in spite of analysis and anticipation for rain to come at a later time, it did come earlier, and close to 90% of the field that was cultivated was lost. Now, of course, we're going to be made whole by insurance, but it does speak to the realities that we face now. In a global context, if you just spend a few minutes watching CNN or Bloomberg, you hear of issues with low water levels, even affecting Germany now when it comes to inland operations. You hear of wildfires. In fact, there's some reports from UK where farmers are already giving warning signs of a possible wildfire that could come even from the combined harvester when harvest process is going on. So this risk is clear for everyone to see now. I think there's less argument about the impact. Even the impact on tourism is clear. You have Lake Grada in Italy that's experiencing the lowest level that they have seen in years. And so there was a story a few days ago of a couple who had gone there a year before and then went the next year, only to find that some under rock were now being seen. Again, effects of climate change. I think globally we are seeing the effects.
Yeah, we're seeing the effect. I mean, a lot of people in Nigeria even have lost their lives, their homes due to flood. And this is all part of it. I remember the last rain in Lagos, you know, some people did lose their lives, and it's all because of flood, obviously connected to climate change. But how does this change the food security agenda in Nigeria? I
think fundamentally it does mean that we must be very aggressive with solutions that are effective. I think for the past 5 to 7 years, we have seen more solutions from both government and non-governmental and private institutions. And while we may argue for the effectiveness of some of these solutions, there are benefits from these solutions, but those solutions must certainly be more effective, because what climate change has done is to, so to speak, reduce the time that is necessary for a level of success when it comes to commercial production, speaking to both livestock as well as crop production. Just taking a look at the Global Food Security Index that was used in 2021, we're 97 out of 113 countries. And if you put in context that by 2050 we would have double the population that we have today, it is clear that there is a potential food security crisis if we don't immediately take effective actions. Just so that we're on the same page, because sometimes when you hear people discuss food security, especially in Nigeria, there's just that focus on food availability and not so much around food affordability, which is part of the dimensions of food security. Also, there are dimensions around stability, meaning when we do have shocks like what we had in the pandemic period, which we're still in, or when you have such shocks, or even the economic shocks that we have as a result of imported inflation, or as a result of the war in Russia and Ukraine, you must have populations and households that are able to withstand or be more resilient during those shocks. All of these are dimensions of food security that, quite frankly, we still have a lot. To do.
Yeah, what would you say would be some of those first steps to this lot you're talking about to support food security in the country in the face of all of this?
I think that one of the first steps is a lot of collaboration that needs to happen. Just taking the ABP program that the CBN has implemented for some years now, a lot of data has been generated amongst different partners. What certainly is happening is a lot of collaboration to share this data, to assess the potential, for lack of a better word, limited success that was experienced. Just examine the reasons behind limited success, and then fix them either in the next ABP iterations or whatever solutions that would be introduced. So I would say two things fundamentally. So innovation and then collaboration needs to be done. But in addition to that will be education. I think that we have to evaluate the way we educate both the farmers as well as other ecosystem players in order to ensure that we can have the effective solutions that we require.
And I know AFEX is active in this. What are you doing?
So in addition to the solutions that people already know that we do, so solutions around access to market, access to capital, access to infrastructure solutions for smallholder farmers, what we're doing that people may not be aware of is that we have started to identify certain farmers who can cultivate between 4 hectares to 50 hectares and even more. And there are a handful of them. At least you can find close to 50 to 100 of this type of people. And so what we're doing is to essentially not necessarily handhold, but closely work with them to see how we can build them into enterprises, not just the agribusiness that we know now, but scalable, impactful, and profitable enterprises that will better prepare us even as we see more effect of negative climate change.
All right, Nathaniel Etim, thank you so much for that. We do wish more work. We want more work from AFEX, in spite of what you're doing, of course, because food security is top on the list when it comes to the basic needs of man, not just in Nigeria. So thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Bye.
All right, so that takes us to a break. Now we still have the markets waiting for you. That'll be after the break. We'll find out, you know, that pleasant close that the equities gives us once in a week. We had it yesterday. We'll give you the details and much, much more after the break. This is Business Morning on Channels Television. Welcome back. Of course, it's still Business Morning here on Channels Television. We'll head to the markets now. Happy to say that we had that bounce at the equities yesterday. We've had it, this is the third week. We have one bounce in the week, but we do hope it will not be just one. So let's look at the market numbers now. If you would, the Nigerian Equities was reversed yesterday's loss. If we will have the numbers, it was up 0.16%. There we see that the all-share index is actually still less than that 50,000, which has been like a mark for a while now, but we're getting close to that. And then the market cap is close 26.7 to 0.8, so we do hope it's getting close to that 29,000. But you would see that the market still has that bearish sentiment. The activity chart was all in the red compared to the previous day. The deals have gone down now from 4,000 plus to just about 3,000. The total volume traded decreased by 3.2%, and value 1.64, exchange 3.6, and then we see that FBN Holding was the most traded stock by volume and value. I guess that's why you have the banking. No, we can go back to the sectors. That's why we have the banking in the green yesterday. There you have it, and then consumer goods was there also. But we did see a good performance from Bois Cement yesterday, which is why we saw that industrial goods was also up. Insurance was down, oil and gas was down yesterday. Now let's look at the other markets. Now the overnight lending rate expanded by 50 basis points to 15%. And there we see the federal government bonds yesterday. There were 27 deals worth 20.93 billion. And then we see the most traded one where was the March 2027, 22 deals yesterday. Let's see the CBN bonds and see how that did yesterday also, if we could have that. Oh yeah, there you have it. 13 deals yesterday worth 20.6. We have Jibola Iro Phillips, who is the head FX trading, FBN Quest Merchant Bank, now to tell us more about the activities in the fixed income market. Hi, Jibola, good morning.
Morning, hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. So we had that DMO bond that was offered. How did that do?
Well, from DMO's standpoint, not so bad. Amount on offer was 225 million total amount, so it was about 205 million. So in all, not so bad. But what you can easily notice is across board the yields went up across all the maturities. The long end of the curve went as high as 14% from 13.749. I mean, that just reiterates CBN's position with respect to hiking NPL and just general market sentiments that rates are on the up, on the up. So across board, we see that, for instance, the 2025 printed at 12.5 at against 11% at the last auction. The 2032 printed at 13.5 at against 13% at the last auction. While the 2042, which is the long end of the curve, that's a 30-year reopening, printed at 14% at against 13.749. So all in all, we can see that there's a bounce and the hiking yields across board. And then in terms of amount sold and in terms of subscription, not so bad, generally from the MO standpoint and from market standpoint as well.
Do you see a sustenance of this at least slightly positive activity in the markets?
I need to reiterate that this is the primary market. The secondary market, on the other hand, has been kind of really muted. Not a whole lot happening with respect to that. That's just generally because of market liquidity. The system liquidity has been in the negative for quite a bit now because of all the withdrawals from central bank and then the higher rates on offer. So we've not seen that much activity in terms of the secondary market. You'll notice that yields have been flat across board, both in the treasury bills and in the bond market, just because nothing is really happening. Liquidity is really tight. So most of the activity has really been focused on the primary market for now.
Now we do think that this will continue, this tight liquidity and muted markets will continue for quite a bit.
Yes, certainly. So, for instance, today is the funding for the bond auction. So you expect that not a whole lot is going to happen because most banks will be funding for the auction, for their winnings from the auction. So you expect that the secondary market would continue to remain quiet throughout the rest of the week with not much happening, with just banks to generally trying to fund their position with respect to other market activities. Also, the FX auction is going to come up on Friday. So a whole lot of banks will have their eye on that as well with respect to liquidity in the market.
All right, Ajibola Phillips, thank you so much for giving us that update in the markets, and wish you the beautiful day ahead.
You too. Have a nice day.
All right, so I guess we can move from that market now, move to another market where Ladi is always happy to talk about. Ladi, I know that yesterday we had your fair greed, about 44, yeah?
Exactly. But
there you go.
We're back down again.
We should have this in red. It should be red.
I know, right? Not a yellow color, but it's still fair. We're still around that fair level at this point. But, Bitcoin is struggling. It's struggling seriously around that 25,000. I told you
yesterday when we saw 44 and you were hopeful that, we're going to cross
exactly.
to greed. I think the time hasn't come. Yeah. I think we can bank on what Michael Naji said some time ago and say that
he's still aiming
we haven't hit rock bottom yet. So we shouldn't expect to start going up. It's just some compensation to keep us breathing.
Some call it the bear market rallies, but we'll keep watching. Hopefully we'll get to that level. Let's flip over now. Let's see the price of Bitcoin this morning there. We see $24,385 there. It's up 0.51%. We see volume trade at $27.70 billion. Let's flip over now to Ethereum there. All right, let's look at the chart first. Current price now, $23,826. See, we've lost that. We're far away from that 25K level at this point. Now, we're looking at the RSI there. We're seeing is getting to oversold region there, meaning that we might see some kind of bounce. So we're seeing a struggle, a range between that 25,000 and 23,000 at this point. All right, now let's flip over. Let's see what's happening with Ethereum there. $1,947 at 8 a.m. this morning. That's up by 0.62%. Volume traded in Ethereum, $16.32 billion. Let's see what's happening with the top alts by market cap there. It's mostly red we're seeing there, with BNB the only green. It's up by 0.33%, $321.55 per coin. Cardano down 58 cents, 0.58% at 57 cents per coin. CE Cash there, 0.10% down. XRP, well, it's above 37 cents, but still down at this point, down 0.79%. Talk about XRP looking quite stable for a while now. Let's bring in my guest now, Uzochukwu Mbamalu, CEO, Powell Remit. Great to have you on the program. Good morning.
Yeah, hello. Good morning, Ladi.
Good morning, Uzochukwu. So we're seeing quite a struggle with price action there with Bitcoin. Looks like 25K is looking hard to break. How you seeing the market?
Yeah, there's a very high chance that we're going to break in the 25K region, and if we break that, we should be looking at 28,300. So.
Yeah, and 28K, but some still see maximum pain coming. You know, talking about the price of Bitcoin. Some are talking about the 16K level. How do you see that? Do you see that coming?
Yeah, you know, there are many factors that really that will really tell if we're going to go lower. You know, right now inflation is very high, and the Federal Reserve is increasing interest rates. So that's one of the factors actually that will call for a bearish market. But I believe next in October, and there will be a stimulus check. There will be a stimulus check in most states in the U.S., and that's a bullish sign. So I believe we should cross the 28K back. So. Right,
and also I saw a report showing that interest with NFTs has hit a new low. How are you seeing that? What's driving that at this time?
Okay, one of the reasons why we had a growing interest in NFTs because we saw the bubble as it were in the NFT space, and it attracted both the good players and the bad actors, right? And and there's a psychology that affects most investors. If you fall for a scam 3 times, it's a very high chance that you won't pull your funds again. So that is what really happened. So there were a lot of wrong projects, and that also affected the interest of most investors. And also we had the Solana hack. The Solana was hacked, and most projects were built on the Solana network. So that's one of the reasons why the interest in NFTs is doing it.
Right. Well, we'll keep watching to see if interest gets back to those NFTs. Thank you so much, Uzochukwu Mbamalu, CEO Powell Remit. It was great having your perspective.
Thank you so much.
All right. So, there we have it. Interest with NFTs not looking so good this year, but hopefully that interest might come back at some point.
Yeah,
I don't know if you have any
I don't think you believe
JPEGs.
that. Even the way you said that, there's still a lot of pain waiting down the line.
So much. It seems like, that's what the sentiment is looking like.
All right. Well, it's the realities of our times. We'll get through it. Right. Thank you so much, Ladi. See you at 1:30 for Business Incorporated. Well, that's it on the program. Thank you so much for being a part of this midweek edition of Business Morning. We do have another fresh episode, fresh conversations tomorrow, about 24 hours from now. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Enjoy the rest of your day.